Well, hi there and welcome to the Richie Allen television show, brought to you in association with BeyondVision.tv and DavidIke.com. My name is Richie Allen. This programme is for the week ending Friday, June 17th. Lots to get through on the programme. We are, of course, going to talk about the MP Jo Cox, who was murdered yesterday. We'll do that in a second. Lots on the European Union. We'll talk about Bob Geldof, Nigel Farage. We'll tell you a few interesting facts about the European Union and what it is. And of course, we will reflect on the shooting in Orlando, which happened earlier this week as well. But I want to start by mentioning, as if you don't know already, that David Icke will be at the O2 Academy in Brixton tomorrow for a 10-hour all-day event. It's terrific, it really is. You know, I know you would say that, Richie, but it is terrific. I saw it 2 weeks ago on the Isle of Wight. There are a handful of tickets left. That is all for that event tomorrow. So do go to davidike.com or the worldwidewakeup.com if you want to go and see that. Go and see David. It will change your life. It will certainly give you a different perspective on what's going on in the world, the events, the manipulation behind them, who is behind them and why. Terrific stuff. Good luck, mate. I know you'll be watching this TV show today as well. So let's start off then with the massive story, I suppose, that developed yesterday. The 41-year-old MP for Batley and Spen in West Yorkshire, Jo Cox, was murdered yesterday. There's a picture of Jo on screen there. Of course, I'd be a liar if I said I knew very much about the lady. She became an MP in last year's general election, first-time MP, a Labour Party MP, it must be said. There is nothing else being discussed, I think understandably, on mainstream media today, and probably for the next few days as well. We'll have a look at one or two headlines in the meantime. When things like this happen, what happens in the independent media as much as in the mainstream media is people make all sorts of claims immediately about how it happened and why it happened. Exploitation, I suppose, is a word you could use. It is exploited by the left and by the right and by the independent media, sometimes by the better independent media, sometimes by the worst of the independent media. A couple of things that I noticed yesterday. Some of our viewers and some of our listeners are going to think that I've got a hard-on, to use a terrible term, about Paul Joseph Watson and InfoWars. I don't, but I want to show you a couple of tweets that came out of InfoWars and its reporters yesterday. You might have a couple of those tweets now. So this is from Paul Joseph Watson. In case you don't know who he is, he's a reporter for InfoWars. Keep sharing this article. It's a mainstream news article he's sharing to counter... Well, in fact, he's sharing an InfoWars article which purportedly demonstrates how the death of Jo Cox is being exploited. So Watson here is getting pretty antsy about the fact that people are exploiting Jo Cox's murder. Shall we see an earlier tweet from Paul Joseph Watson? The British political establishment are brutal thugs. They murdered Dr. David Kelly. Don't put anything past them, said Watson. Well, that's not exploitation, is it? Let's have a look at what Watson was tweeting out while we had learned, or while we were learning about what was happening to Jo Cox before it was announced that she died. I think we have another tweet. Exactly as I predicted, a violent incident right before Brexit. They're going to blame this on Vote Leave. Now, of course, Paul Joseph Watson didn't predict anything like that at all. He may have said in the run-up to the referendum, which takes place in less than a week from now, that there will be some sort of Islamic terror event. I think that's what he was saying, to be honest with you. But look, this is the sort of nonsense you get from some quarters of the independent media. And I think it does great disservice and great discredit to the genre in general. Nobody has any idea what happened to Jo Cox. I'm always disturbed at some of these brain-dead muppets like Watson and beforeitsnews.com and yournewswire.com and Waking Times and all of these publications put out all these stories as clickbait, because then you click on them because you want to find out more. Really? Is this a false flag? Did somebody kill Jo Cox to, further an agenda? So you click on it and you find there's really no story there at all, but you've been suckered into participating in about 20 different advertisements. That's all these people are. They are despicable, they are disgusting, they have no idea who is manipulating global events and why. They are basically parroting channels like Fox News and others. A tweet that did disturb me, though, came from a very mainstream media source, a guy called Adrie van der Luit. Now, he's worked for everybody, this guy. He's worked for Reuters, he's worked for CNN, he's worked for the whole gamut of the mainstream media. Look at this for cynicism. To Farage, Boris, Gove and all the other Brexit tossers, cynically exploiting the European Union referendum to further their career. Happy now, Jo Cox. That's extraordinary, that, isn't it? This guy is a mainstream. This guy works for the mainstream. Hey, do you mind putting that back up again just for a second? I'm a bit embarrassed about my response to that yesterday. I shouldn't be using language in a tweet, and I'll be the first to put my hands up and say it's a bit childish. But it is violent, it is disgusting, isn't it? Likening or linking Leave campaigners to attempted murder. It was attempted murder at the time. We found out a couple of hours later that she had died. Look, it is going to be cynically exploited. It is going to be cynically exploited no matter what happens. Now, scream at the television screen all you want and say, oh, you're a gatekeeper, Alan. I'm not a gatekeeper. I'm perfectly willing to concede that there might be something very sinister behind the murder of Jo Cox. How the hell do I know? I'm also prepared to concede that it's also possible that a lunatic, a deranged madman, decided that on that particular day he was going to create some mayhem and she happened to be on the brunt end of it. That's also possible as well. How the hell do I know? It's been less than 24 hours as we record this since the woman was murdered. Shame on those in the independent media, though, who don't at least acknowledge the fact there are a couple of children and a husband coming to terms with the loss of the woman they love, regardless of what she might have stood for politically, regardless of what her ideas may or may not have been. It's a woman who was murdered. Shame on those sections of the independent media who seek to exploit the death and rant on about why it happened without acknowledging at least that thing. International Business Times head, and I know I'm jumping around, mate, and I'm probably causing you grief there. The International Business Times, actually I think a well-written article. I'm going to try and bring it up here. I'm not prepared, I'm never prepared. What's the headline here? You've got it there, thanks mate. The headline says, Jo Cox false flag conspiracy series swirl on Twitter as Brexit vote looms. What's interesting about this International Business Times article is it doesn't in any way attempt to demonise the conspiracy theorists at all. It just matter-of-factly reports that some people on Twitter, Mike Cernovich, the Jo Cox killing is a false flag by globalists. They found some mentally ill man to go down as a patsy. There you are. Neatly solved. Lieutenant Colombo couldn't have done it better than Mike Cernovich. Neatly packaged up there. There's others on there as well. Hunk Space. EU assassinated one of their own in a false flag against Brexit. That's on the International Business Times. But they're not laughing at it. They're just reporting on the fact that people are saying that there might be an ulterior motive. Again, viewer of this programme, I'm not saying there wasn't. I'm just saying I have no proof that there was. All we know is a 41-year-old mother of two is dead. That's disgusting, whatever the reason behind it. What else have we got here? We've got... Well, you see, this is what I'm worried about, and we're going to talk about this now for a couple of minutes. We've got the Daily Mirror today, and we've got the Daily Mirror story. The headline says... I can't read the headline. Hayden, read that headline for us, mate, will you please?
It says Jo Cox's murder could threaten British democracy and change politics forever.
Threaten British democracy and change politics forever. Thanks, man. I've got to get these checked, I suppose, if I can't read that from here. And I've only just got these. Bloody Specsavers. There are fears that weekly constituency surgeries, campaign walkabouts and public meetings seen as the lifeblood of our culture could now be at risk. MPs insisted they would not be intimidated and stressed that it was essential to our democracy that they could continue to meet the public. But they also called on an urgent review of security in the wake of the horrific attack on Ms. Cox. Some raised questions about whether it would be possible for them to continue to hold weekly surgeries. For our overseas listeners, a weekly surgery is where the Member of Parliament in an office in the constituency opens the doors and members of the public come in to say, Ms. Cox or Mr. Osborne or Mr. Cameron or whatever, I've got a problem, can you help me out with it? That's what a surgery is. So it's raising questions. A study in January of this year found that 4 out of 5 MPs surveyed had been victims of intrusive or aggressive behaviour. Some of these incidents included people being punched in the face, that's disgraceful, hit with bricks and shot with air rifles. I don't remember that being reported in the press. Maybe I did, but I don't remember it. 36 politicians said they were afraid to go out in public, their marriages were under strain, and that some of them were treated for depression and anxiety, experts found. Now this is where I'm going to get a little bit controversial. And I've got to preface what I'm going to say now by saying this. Please don't for a second think that I am in any way impugning the character or the beliefs of Jo Cox. Not at all. The woman was a charity worker. By all accounts, she was deeply committed to helping those less fortunate than herself. She had misguided opinions, I think, on the Syrian refugee crisis and what's really behind it. But it seemed that this woman had a heart and cared about the plight of those affected by Western imperialism. And she worked for Oxfam and other charities, and she was very much committed to working for the poor. So if we just leave Jo Cox aside for a minute, forget Jo Cox, I'm not talking about her. I wonder, the politicians who responded to the surveys, who said they were being harassed, they were being punched in the face, and they were being hit with bricks, I wonder, have any of them considered that the policies they pursue, the votes that they participate in the Houses of Parliament, that result in weapons being sent to Saudi Arabia, for example, to carpet bomb Yemeni men, women and children, votes to participate in the genocide, the wholesale genocide in Syria, votes that reduce the lifeblood money needed by disabled people, by hungry people, by sick people in this country. I wonder, do any of those politicians think that any of that behaviour might be creating and fostering a rage, a hatred, an unsettlement, I suppose, an atmosphere of real discontent, of anxiety, as I said, of anger within society? Is anybody asking themselves that, I wonder? That's in no way to tolerate violence of any description. Anybody who punches an MP in the face or throws a brick at them should be prosecuted for it. And it should be punished in such a way that they will never do it again. But will they have a look at themselves? These traumatic events, more and more and more of them, are being exploited. I'm going to play a clip now of a Labour MP who spoke yesterday, saying that the rhetoric from the Leave campaigners is dangerous and it inspires extremism. Now, I'm not jumping from one to the other. I'm going to come back again to what politicians do, okay, and why they're being trolled and threatened on Twitter and harassed and screamed at, and why they might be getting abuse in the streets. But let's just jump backwards and forwards. Let's look at the exploitation thing. Here's Neil Coyle, Labour MP. Look at this.
Core content of the poster they launched today. Look at what they are putting out, and I just think that they are a very dangerous, and they risk inspiring extremist elements on the hard right in this country.
I don't do melodrama very well. I leave that to others. But I'm going to say this. Neil Coyle should resign in disgrace as an MP. He's not fit to serve the public. He's not fit to serve in Parliament. A couple of hours previous, he was filmed along with Stella Creasy and other obviously emotional Labour MPs coming to terms with the death of a woman that they worked closely with. But now he's blaming it. He's actually literally... Hayden, just briefly jump in there. I'm not in any way over-exaggerating that. This guy is laying the blame squarely at what he's calling fear-mongering, anti-immigration campaigning by the Vote Leave side. This is terrible.
Yeah, I'm saying it's dangerous material. Dangerous material to...
Linking it directly to the murder.
The Leave campaign are no more informative than the Remain campaign. Yet this is mudslinging to an extreme degree. This is using... we see it all the time with politicians. They're opportunistic leeches. They'll use any situation to their own benefit.
But this is more sinister, isn't it?
And he's gone straight away with the murder, I guess you could say, of one of his own.
Yeah.
And instantly twisting it. The fact that we don't know what this lunatic's motives actually were at this point in time. We've got no idea. His neighbours have said, no, you didn't seem political. So
that's right, yeah.
maybe he was just insane.
Maybe he was, yeah.
But this guy has instantly gone on Newsnight, one of the largest venues for doing this, and got, right, okay, I can use this.
And by the way, Hayden, Evan Davis, who is better known for presenting Dragon's Den, who's now presenting Newsnight in the absence of Jeremy Paxman, who retired. Whatever anybody said about Paxman, I don't think Paxman would have stood for the nonsense that was being that was coming out, vomiting out of the mouths last night on Newsnight. Not only from Kyle, but from a Telegraph journalist, from another Labour MP and a Tory MP, saying that we're going to have to address social media. This is tyrannical, this.
Oh, this is working out very nicely for them.
You see, and this is where the exploitation comes from.
Yeah.
So let the Paul Joseph Watsons and the idiots talk about whether or not somebody from the European Union killed her to make it look like blah, whatever. And again, I'm not saying, that anything is impossible. But ultimately, look at what they do, who benefits. This sort of talk now, we're going to have a look, a real close look. Stephen Kinnock, the Labour MP, again today, we must look at social media.
Can I give
There's
you an example?
There's a poisonous narrative.
I more and more often see people, not only is this narrative going on, people are buying into it.
Yeah.
More and more often I get contacts regarding Live Leak of people saying, you're showing terrorist media. You need to stop showing this terrorist media. You should ban these members. They're clearly terrorists.
You've had governments
but this is people
come to you before through Live Leak to say stop showing this material.
Yeah, but we expect that. That's
but hang on a second
par
now.
for the course. But
don't just
people
because you're getting a lot of stick off some of the viewers of this program.
Yeah.
Let's not just fucking. And by the way, I meant to say this at the beginning of the program. Some of our listeners are complaining about the language. This is an adult program. The language isn't used for effect. I swear occasionally. So does my colleague. Just to point out that if the language does worry you, you might not want to allow children watch it. I'm just saying that here. To finish that sentiment, you're getting stick from people, and you dismiss that because you're a decent bloke. You're that's what they're going to do. But people need to know that liveleak.com shows videos from around the world, from war zones, from areas of serious and very, very ongoing political instability and volatility. Those videos give a clue to what's really going on, a different narrative to the mainstream media. And you have politicians in the past and agents of governments coming to you saying, we want you to stop doing that. That's serious shit, man.
Yeah,
because it speaks to this today.
The truth is, we expect it. Like the Congressman Schuster told me we should be, I don't even remember that. It was some ridiculous phrase, good corporate citizens.
Good corporate citizens, yeah.
I don't even know what that is, but
I
clearly,
couldn't. Well, I
don't
could
think
guess.
I am one.
No.
But that doesn't worry me. I expect that. It's when we're getting increasing numbers of contacts from regular people. I was going to say normal people then, but regular people who have bought into it.
Yeah.
You must ban these members.
Imagine it.
But now I've noticed a trend more and more. They don't just say this is... Because if this was just their opinion, brilliant. I don't like this. I want to know why you allow this. That's great. That's a conversation that we should have, because I believe in that. But they always come back with, I'm reporting this. I'm going to the, pick your alphabet agency of choice. It's more and more, it's becoming, to me, quite insidious. It's not that the government are doing it. We expect them to request this. They have to. It's the fact that people are buying into it en masse. And everyone wants to silence people now.
Oh, yeah.
Including people in the alternate media. Yes. Silence them.
The alternate media. And by the way, I must just say this before we move on. I'm in no way a hypocrite. Paul Joseph Watson, I will defend to... I'm not going to be melodramatic and say to the death. I'm not going to die for Paul Joseph Watson. Fucking moron. But I will defend to as best as I possibly can, is the rights of people like Watson and Jones and others to do what it is they do. Absolutely right. They're entitled to their opinion. And I would never see them censored. What I will do is I will argue with it. I will make an argument against it, and they're welcome to do that. What Hayden has been describing there is terrifying, and it's tyrannical. There is an agenda to completely shut down all debate about what governments are doing. That's why you're hearing today MPs' surgeries might be under threat. MPs might not go out as much. They might be more difficult to reach. That's what they want. Because I'm not justifying what happens to people. I'm not justifying violence. But will anybody have a look? Will anybody today or tomorrow or Sunday think about what MPs actually stand for, who they represent, and how that how that leads to the disenfranchisement, the anger, the hatred, the unsettlement, I should say the unsettled feeling that exists in society, the perplexed, people who don't understand what's going on. These people are supposed to be standing for us. These are dangerous times. They're telling us that hate is being fostered online, and they're talking about hate crimes. They're calling what happened to Jo Cox, God love her, a hate crime. Are they going to try and make hate a crime? How can hate be a crime? I said to Hayden Hewitt this morning before we came on air, I said to the future Mrs. Allen, I hate David Cameron. I hate the Blairites in the Labour Party. I hate politicians. I don't know many politicians. I hate what it is they stand for. David Icke will tell me, you shouldn't hate anything, Richie. It can foster illness. It can make you ill. It can affect your biological state, your mental state. I hate these people for what they do. I would never see any harm come to them, ever. Violence is unacceptable, no matter who's doing it. You become them when you descend to that level and you punch and you fight and you shoot and you take a knife, as we saw yesterday. But nobody's going to tell me that hate should be a crime. Jeremy Corbyn said it. It's a hate crime. It can't be a crime to hate what they do. They are responsible for the deaths of millions of people around the world on an ongoing basis. They're starving people to death in this country. They are censoring people. They are introducing a PC agenda to criminalise people having an opinion about anything. I hate them. And I will never stop hating them. But I will never tolerate violence against them. Nor should anybody else. We're going to leave that for now, that particular story, because there's not much else we can say about Jo Cox, other than I never met the woman. Me saying rest in peace is pathetic because I don't know her family, but I regret what happened to her yesterday, regardless of who's responsible for it. We might know more in the coming days. Let's hope we do. The campaign to leave the European Union was basically suspended, as was the campaign to remain, out of respect for her and what happened yesterday. I think they're due to begin campaigning again tomorrow. We can talk about it though. We think the campaign to remain within the European Union is getting more and more desperate. Some polls are putting the leave side at 53% and the remain side at 47%. The desperation is reaching bizarre levels. Have a look at this clip from the Thames this week.
Here are the facts about fishing. Britain makes more money than any other country in Europe from fishing. 2. Britain has the second largest quota for fish in Europe after Denmark. 3. Britain has the third largest landings. 4th, you are no fisherman's friend. You are on the European Parliament Fishing Committee and you attended 1 out of 43 meetings. You're a fraud, Nigel. Go back down the river because you're up one without a canoe or a paddle.
We used to protest against the establishment. Now the establishment protests against us. We must be doing something right. What Mr. Geldof, multimillionaire Mr. Geldof, did was show his absolute contempt for the men and women that have come here today from right across the United Kingdom, asking, demanding to be listened to as their communities are destroyed by the common fisheries policy. And I think, frankly, as a spectacle, it's pretty disgraceful.
What a scruffy bastard Bob Geldof is, isn't he? The great unwashed. He's worth 30 million quid. You know how much it costs for a bottle of Radox shower gel, you dirty fucking bastard. Let's talk about the fishing industry in Britain. The awful truth of it. And I, my friend, I'm going to give you the facts. No conjecture here, no opinion. Ed, we've got a picture of Edward Heath. Here are the facts. There is a sick child abuser and child murderer. Yes, he was. So desperate was he for Britain to join the European Union, the club, because he was compromised, we might get to more of that in a minute, that he agreed that all fishing waters would be merged as a common European resource. This fucker signed that away, even though it wasn't in the treaty at the time. No conjecture. Fact, check it out. Common European resource, signed away, British territorial waters. What did that mean? Well, it meant that a system of quotas was introduced. What did that mean? Well, Britain basically ended up with 13% of the fishing rights in her own territorial waters. What a great idea that was, eh? So by giving everybody else a share in the rich, fish-filled British waters, that resulted in the fleet size being reduced, and it fucked fishing communities in the arse in Britain. 150,000 jobs lost in the last few years alone. Scruffy Sir Bob is a bullshitter. A liar. A guy who supported Brown and Blair before the 2005 general election, remember, called him the John and Paul of global politics. Scruffbag. What did Edward Heath get in return for selling out the European Union? Well, first of all, his child murdering wasn't exposed, but he was also given a Nobel Peace Prize, except he hadn't really created any peace at all. With the money he bought a £3 million house in Salisbury, and he bought a yacht called the Morning Cloud. We might have a picture of that, where he raped and murdered young boys. Well, we know he raped them. The murdering, I think, was done by agents of the British government to make sure the children never spoke, although some of the children survived and did speak and continue to speak. We've spent a lot of time discussing why the European Union was set up. Cries of conspiracy theory and nonsense, you're a madman. We get it all the time. I do when I talk about the Nazi roots of the European Union. Want to play an excerpt from a documentary made several years ago by a journalist I have a lot of time for, even though he won't talk to me on my radio programme because he thinks I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist. Don't know where he's getting that from. This is the Telegraph's Christopher Booker. Where the EU came from and who was behind it. Have a look.
One of the most remarkable things about the European Union is how ignorant people are as to how it came about. A few years ago, when my colleague Richard North and I began researching the history of what is called the European project, we were astonished to find just how distorted and inaccurate all previous accounts of this story had been. The core ideas which have inspired this project go back to the 1920s, and for the men behind it, notably the Frenchman Jean Monnet, their ultimate goal right from the start was to create a United States of Europe. Their aim was to place the peoples of Europe under a form of government like nothing the world had seen before, a government that was supranational. To achieve their goal, they came up with two brilliantly clever ideas. The first was that it could never be achieved overnight. It would have to be assembled piece by piece over many years without revealing its ultimate purpose. The other idea was that all the national governments of Europe should be left in place, while being gradually hollowed out from within, as they passed under ever greater control by the supranational power. Thus, what amounted to a slow-motion coup d'etat could take place without people realizing what was happening. That is why we called our story The Great Deception, because such is what the historical evidence shows it to have been.
Money was on the record as saying, actually, that the progress towards the superstate should be a series of steps, but steps designed in such a way that the peoples of the European sovereign nations wouldn't have a fucking clue what was really going on. And that's on the record now. That again isn't invented here. But because of the complicity of the world's media, the vast majority of people in Britain don't have a clue. Why aren't the BBC, Channel 4 or ITV saying to their guests on their shows, hey, what did Monet say years ago about these federal superstate? They've no idea, people in Britain. They've no idea. Not a dicky bird. This is the plan for the coming years. Aidan's going to put up the story about the EU army there. I'll read a paragraph for you. As part of the increasingly desperate efforts to prevent a Brexit vote, the Eurocrats are maintaining a discreet silence about their future plans to give Brussels even greater powers. This is going on. All of this is being kept secret until the referendum is over and until the British people have voted Remain. Outlawing high-energy domestic appliances like dishwashers, kettles and hairdryers, to interfering in the running of our ports. They want to have a European-wide force answerable to Brussels at every port in Europe. This is the truth. The European army, all of it not being discussed on British television, save for a few articles in newspapers like that. A German-led initiative to form a European Defence Union. It became clear that the announcement might put people off, and it might encourage people to vote leave, so that was shelved, but thankfully there are still one or two decent journalists in the world who were able to put that together, that article, and show people it's going on. Deception, 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 all of the time. Keep them in the dark. Also the Turkish visas, This is something else they tried to keep secret, but the Sunday Times journalists exposed it last Sunday. They want to give 1.5 million visas to Turkish citizens to allow them access to the Schengen area. What could possibly go wrong? Brilliant. Countries are being overwhelmed by the flow of migrants from the Middle East. It's going to devastate public services. Many times we have to say this. All right, then let's start handing visas out all over the shop. And God have mercy on Jo Cox, the MP. She was right. We are bombing these people out of existence. They might have beards on. They might say Allahu fucking Akbar. But they are armed, trained and funded by us. So we have a responsibility to do something for these people. We're killing them, we're demolishing their homes, and we're orphaning their children and making widows of their women. We could at least give them some fucking bandages and a roof over their heads, maybe. And this is what the Paul Joseph Watsons and the increasingly moronic and idiotic Alex Jones don't understand. While they back Donald Trump as the way out of all of this, because he'll build a wall apparently, and he'll stop people coming to America because the Islamists are lunatics and are trying to kill us. This is increasingly what's getting lost in translation. Yes, the radical jihadists are real. They do throw people off buildings. They're doing what we want them to do. Connect the dots. How many times have we got to say it? This is a Rothschild, Rockefeller, Warburg project. Transfer all of the universal wealth, every natural resource on the planet, public services to corporations through trade agreements like TTIP, which depend on the expansion of the European Union and the transfer of sovereignty to that particular organisation. And the media are shameless whores. Save for one or two conscientious journalists, the media are shameless whores, as are most politicians. Which is why they want to shut down dissent online, which is why they want to criminalise thought, criminalise hate for what they are doing, when what they are doing is hateful, selling out the British people while murdering millions of people around the world, and then making demons out of the people they are murdering. And your Alex Joneses and one or two others in the independent media, sadly, with an ever-expanding audience, basically parroting Fox News and others in the lies they are telling people about why this is happening. Speaking of shameless whores, when the subject of why all the world's economists are backing Remain was put to Nigel Farage on last weekend's Marr show, Farage said this.
What's going to happen? And he looks at the Treasury forecasts and the IFS, and that's why he's worried.
Well, and I do understand that these relentless scare tactics, Project Fear, now it's Project Threat with our pensioners today. I do understand that some people have been scared, but let me just say this. Firstly, the IFS, this great independent god of economic forecasting, who funds it? Well, mostly the British government,
yes,
and over 10% of their income comes from the European Union. You know, think tanks
only a
like
small
that.
amount from the EU.
Well,
you're not saying they're a corrupt organisation.
Well, I'm saying over 3/4 of their funding comes from the British government and the European Union.
So you're saying we shouldn't trust what they say?
Well, I'm saying that if you work, you know, for government and effectively are funded by the EU, and you're asked to produce a report, you tend to do what you're told. You don't bite the hand that feeds
That is
you.
a very serious allegation against
Yes.
people who have been regarded as gold standard, serious economic advisors to be taken seriously.
Well, do you know something?
Any journalist worth his salt would say to Nigel Farage, all right, Nigel, we'll check the funding of these institutions and we'll confirm you're right, but Marr wouldn't say that because... Put it up there, Hayden. The whoring motherfucking BBC is sucking at the teat of the Euro cow as well, to the tune of millions. So what does Marr do? Serious allegations, move on. No, Alex Jones hasn't taken over the presenting of the Marr show. So Marr says, move on. These are very serious allegations, move on. They're true. the Institute of Fiscal Studies, the London School of Economics. We showed you on the show last week, we demonstrated millions of pounds a year from the European Union. If they started giving me millions of pounds to present the Richie Allen Show with Hayden Hewitt, I'd be telling you to vote fucking Remain as well. Stay in forever. It's a bit late now. We should have thought of that, Hayden. We should have asked the fuckers for some fun and we would have said it.
It's not too late. I've got the TTIP Twitter account that I've had a chat with on Twitter. But there is one other thing about the Brexit campaign. I was reading about this just late last night. I didn't get time to get in touch with you. There is talk now that the referendum could possibly be postponed until October because the two Brexit groups, the one led by Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, and then some other one led by Farage and all that, have had a falling out as to who is the real Brexit group, which could see the referendum put back to October, which I'm sure would work out very nicely for Cameron and his
And this is why at the very beginning we didn't do what the lunatic shows do, which is tell you what's going on. This is why I said it is possible there was something very sinister behind the events of yesterday. I never said it wasn't. Remember that. Rewind before you think, he's caught now. No, I'm not. We know what the system does. We know what the agents of the system do. See Dr. David Kelly. Right? But Watson doesn't know that. Neither do I. But it's possible. And we'll report on it. And if we find any evidence to support it, we'll tell you about it on this programme and on the radio show. You see, your politicians and your media are owned by the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers and the Warburgs. They own everything. They own the money supply. It gives it to Gordon Brown, Osborne, Darling, Blair, Cameron, Clegg to warn you that the Northern Ireland peace process is fucked if we leave. The north of England will be a wasteland, apparently, according to Gordon Brown, if we leave. We'll be killed by terrorists if we leave. World War III if we leave. The Rothschild, Rockefeller, Warburg cartel, they own everybody, including this guy.
I'm concerned about the way the European Union is increasingly operating like a free market across Europe, tearing up the social chapter, damaging working class and workers' interests across Europe, hiding tax evasion in Luxembourg and other places, and secretly negotiating a transatlantic... Can I finish? Yeah. Secretly negotiating a transatlantic trade and investment partnership. I think we as a party need to be making strong demands of defending and expanding the social chapter, defending and expanding workers' rights across Europe, and chasing down these approved tax havens that exist by the European Union all across Europe, and asking some serious questions about the way they've treated the people of Greece and other countries by their imposition of austerity measures on them. Okay.
Well, we seem to be... How are you going to change it if you're out of it? And the people who are undermining the social chapter is the Tories being dragged to the right by their own backbenchers.
This is why the point I'm making is that Britain ought to be defending those social gains. We, as the Labour Party, should be making demands on this rather than leaving it to Cameron to go away and tear up...
This is a serious appeal. If somebody finds Jeremy's balls, please mail them to Jeremy Corbyn, care of the Rothschild banking cartel, Westminster, London. We'll take a very quick break. We'll be back with some more. We'll talk about the Orlando shooting briefly and one or two other things after these.
Here at Accounts Direct, we understand that, as a small business owner, it's all too easy to find yourself up to your neck in, something this colour. We'll get you out of the stuff, and with our experience in restructuring, planning, and even refinancing, we'll help you stay out of it too. Accounts Direct. Accountants on your side. Said
Welcome back. This is the Richie Allen Show, brought to you in association with BeyondVision.tv and DavidIke.com. Brixton tomorrow. Go and see Ike if you're around. Terrific. If not, and you're somewhere else in the world, check out the worldwidewakeup.com for all the details of where he's going to be over the next 18 months, possibly even 2 years. They're adding dates all the time. Check out the Live Leak show on liveleak.com every Thursday at 9 p.m. BST. Terrific show, hilarious show, funny, pissy as well. A lot of the time, some really interesting opinions on what's going on in the world. That show appears on the Live Leak page, 9 p.m. British summertime, Thursday. I make radio shows Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. and on Sunday at 11 a.m. BST. Completely different to anything else that's out there. My radio shows, talking to men and women who credibly challenge the mainstream narrative. And that's all the plugs for the minute, I think. I'm going to tell you what I think about the Orlando shooting now, and then I'm going to invite my friend Hayden Hugh to give his take on it. Terrible thing last weekend, 50 people murdered by a man whom we were initially told became angry by seeing gay men kissing. I think that was a bit silly. That was put out there by the American cable news channels initially. I've spent time in Florida in the summer. It's hard for me to fathom how the guy got guns into a nightclub without arousing suspicion. I am not saying it's impossible at all. I'm sure everything is possible. Florida nightclubs are famous for their security. I know this to be true. I spent time there. Drugs, of course, being a big issue historically. That's the way it's been reported in the last few days. But we're going to play a quick clip before I continue on. It's also been reported in the last couple of days that he was gay. This is kind of bizarre. Have a look at this.
As well.
I believe in my heart that he was a gay man, living in a life that he just could not be his authentic self.
3 young men confirmed to Domenico that Omar Mateen had connected with them using the gay hookup app Grindr, and going back a year.
That he was soliciting them for meeting up, flirting, back and forth, things like that.
Those claims are now piling up, painting a complicated picture of Omar Mateen, a married man with a young son, and a decade-long trail of homosexual connections.
I recognized him from one of the apps, but I instantly blocked him because, he was, very creepy in his messages.
The Pulse nightclub says Cord Cedino was very familiar to Mateen.
That's not his first time going there. I know that for a fact.
He was trying to pick up people.
Same story from this man.
He used to come in the bar about on the weekend. Sometimes he would be there. Sometimes he would miss a couple of weeks and then be in again. He was regular.
Doesn't exactly fit with the radical jihadi fundamentalist picture that the US government and media painted very early on, does it? Who was his daddy? Great piece in 21st Century Wire this week. Patrick Henningsen, by the way, who is basically the man behind 21st Century Wire, is a rare breed in the independent media. He's a sensible guy who deals with facts. And when it's supposition, Patrick will tell you it's supposition. Omar Mateen worked as a contractor. That's the guy who allegedly killed all those people. And I think he probably did kill all those people. He worked as a contractor for the US Department of Homeland Security and for G4S. Not going to labour the point here. We know all about G4S. Do your own homework. Then we learned that his dad was also standing to run for the president of Afghanistan. He's was allied with the Taliban leadership. An absolutely ideal profile, writes Patrick Henningsen, for a Washington-managed, CIA-controlled opposition political candidate. That's the way it works, by the way. See anybody who's been put in Iraq, in Afghanistan, Karzai, all these people, CIA-controlled going back years, right? Sadiq Mateen, that's the dad of Omar. I order National Army, National Police and Intelligence Departments to immediately imprison Karzai, Ashraf Ghani, Zalmay Khalilzad, Atmar and Saif. The guy was a politician. He was known to have worked with the US State Department and possibly the CIA, probably the CIA. So Omar was known to the FBI. His colleagues reported him for having sympathies with the Taliban and ISIS. We've kind of heard that before, haven't we? A few times over the years. An unlikely source, though. Imagine, I nearly collapsed with admiration after I collapsed of nearly having a heart attack. Fox News is asking pertinent questions. Have a look.
Now, Fox News contributor Ellen Ratner says the press have a duty to ask the tough follow-up questions and to dig deeper into the FBI's interviews with Mateen. Is that right, Ellen?
That's absolutely right. The question is, the press has just totally ignored it. Well, the FBI interviewed him twice, and they let him go. Okay, should he have had a gun? Should he have been on a watch list? I understand that. But we need to know what kinds of questions were being asked of him. Were there follow-up questions? Did they look into any of his social media? In other words, what has the FBI done to really show what kind of questions they asked this guy or people in his environment? Did they take a look at his father's social media, which certainly has some questions, to say the least? And so, in other words, I think the press needs to press the FBI in terms of what kinds of things they have asked about this man.
Well, it's very...
But the press won't ask any questions of the FBI or Homeland Security. They just won't do. They'll lap it up. They will report all of this stuff. Even the stuff which contradicts the stuff that they published the day before, they won't even acknowledge. Oh, by the way, yesterday we said this, today we're saying this. And I suppose the ignorant American public, and they are no more or no less ignorant than the public here, lap it up, ho-hum, pass the butter, another lunatic has killed 50 people, we have to have a look at our gun laws and all of that, just before Hayden comes in. This is what I think. I think a lot of people were killed at that nightclub. I think that's a terrible thing. I despair when people come out all the time and say, it never happened. Now, that's born out of the fact that there are unbelievable problems with the Sandy Hook shooting story. The former Florida State Trooper and National Safety Schools Inspector Wolfgang Halbig has asked some very fucking disturbing questions about Sandy Hook. And anybody who watches the video presentations put together by Wolfgang will find some very serious problems with that. But since then, every time there's a shooting, the annoying bastards in some sections of the independent media jump out to say that it never happened at all. Crisis actors. Again, I don't know. I suspect a lot of people were killed. There's a good chance this guy did it. But the story around him, who he was, where he came from, his father, is disturbing. It's sinister beyond anything. Beyond any words I could find to describe it. And should be discussed and should be investigated. But it won't be. My tuppence worth before Hayden jumps in, and he's got some interesting devil's advocate positions to put, which are very important, by the way. My take on it is, who benefits? The agenda to make gun ownership more, I say, more stringent, more strict, more difficult to obtain a gun in America. A lot of people would say, well, come on, Richie, you don't want lunatics getting guns. I'm not going to even address that because I've addressed it too many times on the radio show. Posse Comitatus is an act increasingly under threat in the United States of America. It's the act that says the military can never take over the policing domestically within the United States. We're seeing it more and more and more. We're seeing the hyper-militarisation of the police. I think these events are exploited, no matter how they happened, are exploited to further that agenda. More and more and more armed to the teeth police, more tanks, more civil liberties pushed aside. You can't do this, you can't go there, you can't go here, you can't do that, you can't use this social media site. These are the proposals coming out of such an event. But let's not forget, the guy was known to the FBI very well. His company, G4S, said he had been radicalised. His wife had complained about him. His father was known to the State Department. His father was quite possibly talking to the CIA about maybe making a political move in Afghanistan. Ask a few questions. That's all we're asking. Hayden, what's your take on it? Him getting into the nightclub, you think it's possible, right?
Okay, I don't have a huge amount of devil's advocacy to put on this one, but yeah, it is. I don't know whether they had pat downs at Pulse nightclub or not.
Yeah, we can't say for sure.
If they did, I'm out of ideas.
Yeah.
If they didn't, someone demonstrated online how you would get an AR-15 and several clips in an ordinary pair of jeans.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's impossible.
And this isn't some kind of weird military way of doing things. Literally, he just pushed it down with all the clips and showed how quickly you can... this guy was a Marine, trained Marine, So he said, take a few seconds off, because obviously he was very adept at doing this sort of thing. So it is feasible a man could get the gun in the club.
Yeah, can't argue with that. It can happen. Yeah,
it's feasible.
I think it's unlikely, but I cannot possibly say it didn't happen.
Well, the fact is,
I think it's unlikely.
He got in and killed a lot of people.
One way or the other.
He got a gun in that club.
Unless there was a gun in the club, that's also possible.
Okay, but there is a gun in that club. He killed a lot of people. The rest is hearsay, guesswork, and I can't.
Yeah,
I'm leaving that to everybody.
Tell you what worries me, Hayden. This is a bit unfair now because I've just interrupted. I don't want to interrupt you, but I'll tell you what bothers me. One of the Florida cable news phone-in shows, radio shows, a guy who was at the club was talking about his experience and seemed to be saying that there were people outside trying to keep the doors closed and he was cut off mid-sentence. Now, that isn't bullshit. I've seen and heard that clip, and that really disturbed me, that as well. Could it
That's
be
the other...
You see? But it won't be investigated. We can speculate all day long.
That's the problem. But also, in any situation like this, one classic symptom is people reporting more attackers than there are. And I don't just mean in these false flag situations.
Right, yeah.
In general situations involving extreme acts, eyewitnesses are the least reliable people there. We know that's true in a stressful situation. People often get it wrong. That's why there's so much garbled information
in a dark nightclub. If a guy is shooting wildly, or according to the official report, he wasn't. He was very clinical, in what he was doing. But people are going to be terrified. They're going to be screaming. They're going to be making for the exits. But I do have sympathy with those who are asking questions about the success of the guy, how successful he was.
Here's what I boil it down to. This is what I boil it down to. Let's take out handlers, conspiracies, things like that. If everyone out there isn't hugely offended by the fact that a man who over a period of a couple of years has had his deterioration in his mental condition noted, had his sympathies for terrorist organisations noted, there's been domestic violence on there, his company have informed the FBI, he still legally bought an assault rifle. Now, if that doesn't make you annoyed enough, there's something wrong with you. If you then add in who his father is, the fact that even ISIS Radio, I didn't know they had a radio station, ISIS Radio was claiming, because of course they're going to say, yeah, he was definitely one of ours. There are too many things to get you very, very annoyed before you even get as far as handlers.
A story broke yesterday, which we don't have, and we probably don't have time to get it now, but the viewers can find it for themselves. A gun store owner basically went on the record yesterday or Wednesday to say that he actually informed the authorities 2 or 3 weeks ago when the guy bought a gun again and again. So making a guess, not because I'm a conspiracy theorist, based on the evidence that's available, I'm guessing somebody had an idea the kid was going to do something silly and somebody looked the other way while he did it.
Entirely feasible.
But how the hell can I prove that here in Manchester and England?
There's a complete lack of cohesion in terms of information sharing and accessibility, and we know that's still the case in those organisations, either by design or by default.
That's right, yeah.
That is the way it is. They don't talk even to people. The FBI departments in different states don't get along, let alone into agency stuff. There are a million ways, and you have to point this out, and I know people are going to give me shit for this as if somehow it's what I'm telling you is the case. It's not. There are a million ways for people to fall through the cracks, no matter how exceptional their family or anything else. You can't always, and I know you're not, you can't always assume every big event has a big cause.
No.
I am not sat here saying you're all crazy if you believe the other thing. I'm saying we have to look at everything, and at the end of it,
look at everything as dispassionately as you can.
Yeah, sadly, the only stance anyone, if you're genuinely honest, can say, which is exactly what you say, I don't know, I cannot state as fact, but I believe,
I suspect.
Because. As long as you're giving... Then
I said it to you a couple of minutes ago, mate. To me, it's just a little boy who cried wolf, In the great stories, the little boy who cried wolf, he got away with it 2 times. Yeah. And the 3rd time, he got savaged to death by a fucking wolf. Proper order. Well, that's how I read it anyway. He might have gotten away with it in the end. So what you have there is, he was known to the authorities, he was unwell. It's just the same story over and over again. I'll tell you though, it did amuse me this week, and it caused a little bit of a a kerfuffle. It amused me to see those in the independent media who would have you believe that there's a gay agenda to teach 7-year-olds fisting. That those same people are now crying about the plight of gay men and women with respect to how they are treated by some whom pursue a more extreme form of Islam. You could choke on the irony.
Well, just before we go,
couldn't you?
Could I ask you, Richie, does he sell a 100% herbal tablet to deal with that?
Elephant cock tablets. Buy my elephant cock tablets after I told you that gay men have an agenda to teach 7-year-olds fisting. Shall we leave it on that, shall we? On that distressing note. That was this week's television show. Check out davidike.com. Check out richieallen.co.uk. Check out, of course, check out infowars.com. Why not? And do check out liveleak.com as well. We censor nobody. We will never suggest ever that anybody should be precluded from their opinion. What we'll do is take it on. And the slings and arrows go both ways, so feel free to take us on as well. Until next week, bye for now. Enjoy David Icke tomorrow. Bye for now.